And of course, work-life balance is something that we all care about a lot. Some of us are much better at it than others. I know for a fact that you do it very well. Now, is that because I always hear the phrase "work smarter, not harder." I'm still yet to confirm whether that's a myth or not.
Yep.
Obviously, there are smarter ways to work, but things like deadlines and things like that happen. For yourself, when 5 p.m. hits, normally you've done all your critical things by that time and you can go, or it doesn't matter how important it is, I'm out of here.
I've basically done all the critical things by then.
Right.
So some key things which I've done to allow me to leave at 5 every day is I've always made it clear to my boss what to expect from me and make sure that they're okay with that. So once your boss is on board, that's good. I find it easy to say no.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people find it hard to say no. But if you train and practice, you can say no. It's not an obligation to help out other people with their work. You can always say no. So I've done that. And the last thing is my offering at work. So I think it's key that everyone knows what they're offering at work. When your boss hires you, whoever hires you, what are they hiring for? And when in your interview, what are you saying you do better than other people? And if your offering is I work harder and longer, then that's what you're going to have to do to fulfill your end of the bargain.
Right.
And then your work-life balance is not going to be very good.
Right.
But if your offering is something else, and so my offering is never I work harder and longer. My offering is I'm better educated. I've trained more so that I can offer you more. What I offer is not long hours. What I offer is the good ideas or the thinking which no one else could do. And I can do that in 4 hours and finish my day.
Right.
And that is what I'm offering you. And you can hire me if you want. And that's what I'm offering. I'm not offering to work 12 hours a day.
Right.
If you want that, find someone else.
Yep.
And I'm lucky because I've done enough education to be able to offer that and hold the line when it comes to hours. But if you're not in a good bargaining position, it's harder.
Yeah, definitely. Now I'm guessing that I'll 1 point to working smarter, not harder. What you've just explained seems to be something like that. Now this, you touched on a very, very key point there and learning to say no. Now that's very difficult to do, especially in, let's call it the meritocracy, if I can say it right.
Yep.
Or as as the corporate environment gets, it is quite competitive and everyone wants to do a good job, etc., etc. Now, saying no, I'm guessing that's a skill. I'm going to call it a skill that you developed over time, or is this something you found easy to do from the get-go, from your first or second year at work?
So I actually never found it easy to do. Like a lot of people, I think, inbuilt into me as one of my fundamental things I just assumed was right was that you go to work. If people ask you for help, especially if they're more senior, you have to help them.
Right.
The whole hierarchy thing.
Correct.
But I had to break that at some stage because I guess I was lucky enough that throughout my career, I've had multiple senior people ask me for different things. So I've had to learn to say no to one or the other.
Because it's physically impossible.
It's physically impossible to do and keep two people happy.
Right.
And so I learned early on that you can say no. And it's okay to say no. And the people above you in the corporate hierarchy are not always right. Often wrong. And if you say no, it's not no, I'm not going to do my job. It's no, I'm not going to do your job for you.
Right.
And that's oftentimes what happens in the corporate world.
Right.
And I mean, it's easier when you're senior, more senior, and you have the ability to make decisions on what you should and shouldn't do.
Right.
But very hard when you're a junior, and probably not recommended when you're a junior.
Yep.
But as you get older and more senior in your career, you have to learn to say no. Otherwise, you'll always be asked to do more.
Correct.
Like if I was someone else, why would I not give my work to you?
Sure.
And say, because there's a lot of grey lines when it comes to who should do what.
Yep.
Within your team, outside of your team, which team should be doing this work. And if you're the guy who says yes all the time, then you're going to be working 12 hours a day for the rest of your life.
Right. Wow. I just always love, obviously you can hear Dennis has, he always has a clear logic when he talks about things, and that's why it's always so interesting to talk to him. And of course he's just noble honesty, and it's just fantastic. I love it, mate. I love it. It's great. Now this, I'm gonna stay on this note a tad longer and we'll move on. When you say no, generally, I guess it's recommended that you go about it with some level of diplomacy.
Yes, very important.
Right. So obviously, you do that.
Yes. Well,
okay.
So I've been taught the art of saying no without saying no.
So that's the key, guys.
Let's say you ask me, Dennis, we're in the same team.
Right.
And let's say you're a lazy person. You go, Dennis,
I
haven't got time for this. Can you do this thing for me?
Yep.
And so I've got to make a decision whether I think I should do it for you.
Right.
Whether it's because I like you or I don't like you or whatever, or I think you're lazy and you're just pushing work to me.
Yep.
So let's say I decide to say no.
Yep.
The first way I started saying no when I was young, before I learnt the art of saying no without saying no, was, no, I'm not going to do it for you. You should do it yourself, right? Okay. And then what does that open you up to? That opens you up to him going to the manager saying, Dennis wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
I have stuff on my plate.
Yep.
He thinks I'm lazy, but I'm not. In this case, actually, I'm not. Here's the evidence. And then once in a while, you're stuffed because you're like, I thought he was just being lazy.
Right.
And now I've got a cross next to my name for being uncollaborative with my teammates.
Right.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
Say no without saying no. So this is what I was taught. Say, and this is part of the politics and the dishonesty and whatever.
Yeah.
But you have to do it in a nice way. So you say, look, I really want to help you. I know it's important, what you've just asked me. I'm just really busy right now. Let me get back to you on this tomorrow. But why don't you start by doing this part first? That puts the ball back in their court for doing something first. Doesn't, like in negotiation speak, it doesn't make you obligated to do anything.
Right.
And you've acknowledged their point of importance and you've acknowledged that you want to help them, but you haven't given them anything. And you can decide tomorrow if you want to help them, or you can come up with something else tomorrow and say, look, I'm actually doing something else for someone else. Why don't you speak to them if you want your work to be more prioritized? And then you put it back into their court. So you can always do that if you have other work which is more important for you.
There you go. Mate, we might have to do a dedicated podcast on the art of saying no. This is really interesting and very important, especially for many of us who are working in the corporate world, myself included. That's something I struggle with all the time, saying no in a way that you're not going to burn your bridges per se. And some of us, it's a lot harder to do than others. Obviously some people by certain personalities will sort of put you in a position to make it easier or harder. But you brought up a very good point where it's, especially in the beginning when you're learning to say it, it's never easy. Of course, it's something that's very difficult to do. But if it's actually a skill that you can hone and sharpen and learn to do properly or well.
Well, especially important in the corporate world because, I don't like all this rubbish and, lying to each other and dishonesty, but in the corporate world, people are going to use that. There are some people who are dishonest and who might just ask you to do work knowing that they're lazy. And they might use you saying no against you. They might just build up ammunition, and at the end of the year in your review, you might suddenly be hit by your boss saying, this guy gave me a piece of paper which showed he asked for work 6 times for you to help and you did not help.
Wow.
Right? So you don't want that to happen.
Right.
And there are people like that. So unfortunately, you have to learn. If you want to progress, you want to learn how to say no without saying no, so that they will not have the ammunition. But with someone you have a good relationship, you just say no. That's it.
Yeah.
But when you need to say no without saying no to people who are trying to sabotage you or people you're not really trusting, then you have to
Right.
think about using that.
That's right, because we all have our own full plates anyway. So obviously that's your priority. Of course, if you're in a position to help, you will. But most of the time, we've always got conflicting priorities. There's always 10 things to do with time to only do 5 of them. So it's all about prioritization, and that's actually really that's some really good advice there. That's really good advice.